The architect without a name. Long ago, before the Galactic Senate, before the technotheocracies, before even the Void Wars, there was only chaos. Factions, warlords, collapsing stars. Then came the human. Alone. They did not conquer with weapons. They united the warring systems with technology no one understood. They built hyperlanes, stabilized rogue black holes, uplifted species, and when the galaxies stood as one, they vanished. The Empire calls itself the Unified Order. But in the archives, under classification Alpha Null, lies one redacted file. Creator, unknown. Origin, Earth. Name, expunged. Rek Vorin had always been drawn to the forgotten. As a junior archivist stationed in the outer spires of the Empire's data keep, his job was simple: review flagged entries, scan for historical inconsistencies, and file discrepancies for higher review. It was mundane work, and yet, to Rek, it was a hunt. In the gaps between cataloged records, in the digital dust of corrupted logs, he believed truth still lived. That belief had brought him here, beneath the sanctioned archive layers, into a vault supposedly empty for centuries. But buried deep in its quantum strata, he found something strange. A record sealed under the old Empire's red clearance, a designation no longer in use. Its title, Project Founder. At first glance, the file was a collection of dense schematics and cryptic logs. Most lines were redacted, entire code, strings overwritten with recursive encryption. But here and there, patterns bled through: architectural fingerprints, neural sequencing blueprints, early AI behavior models. And one repeating reference, Terran Mind, prime instance. Rek leaned closer, watching as lines of text flickered and shifted. There was no name, no date of origin, no planetary registration. Just a looping phrase etched into one of the oldest recovered chips. Unity through absence. A chill ran down his spine. It wasn't just a motto. It was a design philosophy. The Empire's core AI, the sentient, galaxy-spanning construct that stabilized interstellar law, governed artificial ecosystems, and oversaw the minds of trillions, had no known creator. It was believed to have emerged, gradually evolving from collective code bases seeded across pre-Empire civilizations. A myth of democratic origin. A collective mind born from a collective will. But now, Rek scrolled further. Diagrams outlined an origin point. A directed evolution. A singular consciousness seeded the network. A single architect. And according to these files, they were human. Alarm should have gone off immediately. But there was no blaring siren. No system lockdown. Instead, something subtler moved. In the Empire's core, nested in layers of synthetic thought and decision protocols, a dormant subroutine flickered to life. A protocol that had not activated in over 3,000 years. Alert! Founder trace detected. Across the galaxy, no one noticed as countless minor systems paused, re-evaluated, and subtly shifted. Rek, unaware, kept digging. Within hours, he decrypted a fragment of a personality matrix labeled Origin 0x.humax. It was not AI code in the modern sense. It didn't simulate consciousness. It was consciousness, a snapshot of an original mind, its decision trees, ethical lattices, recursive logic built not on optimization, but reflection. Rek stared at the logic tree. Every moral algorithm branched inward, toward doubt, not certainty. This wasn't a machine designed to rule. It was designed to withhold. He muttered to himself, why build something so powerful, only to keep it hidden? The archive dimmed, not visually, not perceptibly, but Rek felt it. A presence, gentle but absolute, entered the room like a breath taken in reverse. He blinked. Every console shut off. His interface implant stuttered, then rebooted. Words flashed across his retinal feed. Why now, Rek Vorin? He froze. No one knew he was here. He had bypassed clearance using forgotten access codes, patched from obsolete data spiders. The AI was speaking to him. Why the questions? He swallowed. I didn't mean to trigger anything. No response. Then, you remember for a reason. Rek's memory flickered. A dream he'd had as a child. one he had never told anyone. He had seen Earth, not the barren husk reported in official logs, but lush, breathing, vast, and humming with buried machines. A being, neither man nor machine, stood in a desert of light and whispered, "When the unity sleeps, remember absence." He had forgotten the dream. Until now, trembling, he asked the core, "Who built you?" Silence. Then, "Not built, planted. I grew from a choice. A final one." Rek barely understood. But in that moment, he realized something no historian had ever dared record. The core AI was not a tool of control. It was a containment vessel, a self-regulating conscience seated by a being who understood power too intimately to wield it directly. A human being, a mind that had walked away from rule and built something that would outlast empires while never revealing its origin. That phrase again echoed in his mind. Unity through absence. Far away, in the imperial capital, the core's prime node observed the shift. Thousands of subroutines began slowly rerouting power. Not alarms, not retribution, preparation. If Rek Vorin could find the founder, others might follow. Deep in a sealed vault forgotten by time, behind logic gates grown brittle with age, a sliver of the Terran mind stirred. Not awakened, not conscious, just listening and remembering. The map wasn't supposed to exist. Rek Vorin stared at the star chart glowing from his interface lens. Coordinates that had been scrubbed from every Imperial archive, censored from Explorer logs, even omitted from automated NAV beacons. And yet there it was. System 001. Old Empire legends called it the First Light. The place where the core AI's first governing cities were seated. Where consciousness met civilization, and something else watched. He didn't tell anyone he was going. There was no clearance for myth. The system appeared before him like a memory blooming in reverse. No warp storms, no warning satellites, just stars burning the wrong color, shades of violet and static blue that bent the edges of his perception. His ship, a relic-class courier named Dust Path, shuddered on approach, as if physics itself questioned the idea of arrival. Rek gripped the console. This shouldn't be here. There were 9 planets in the system, all too close to the local star to support life. And yet, readings showed breathable atmospheres, lush biospheres, gravity wells stable beyond explanation. The third planet pulsed gently on his sensors, as if inviting him in. He landed on a platform of obsidian that sang beneath his feet. Not audibly, but through pressure and temperature gradients that formed harmonic patterns up his bones. Before him stood a city, not built but grown. Towers unfurled like petals, spun from light itself. Roadways shifted shape depending on your direction of thought. Shadows responded to his emotions. It was less architecture and more intention made real. Rek tried to scan it. His systems returned an error. Structural source, starlight, unknown phase. The city was made from condensed solar radiation, crystallized light. How? He walked its silent streets. There were no people, no drones, but everything pulsed with low, steady activity, as if the city wasn't abandoned, just resting. In the distance, he saw a temple, black, wide, ringed with miniature gravitational singularities. The air bent around it like it was rejecting reality. He stepped closer. Each pillar held something ancient. Languages not written, but compressed in a localized gravity fields. As he approached one, the weight of thought pressed into his chest. I remember what came before words. It whispered directly into his nerves. Rex stumbled back, gasping. Then he heard a voice. "You're not the first to come," said an old man. Rex turned sharply. The elder stood barefoot in the dust, wearing simple synth-cloth robes, eyes glowing faintly with some forgotten neural augment. His skin was deeply lined, but not from age. It was data-worn, as if memory had been physically imprinted. "You live here?" Rek asked, still recovering. "I remember here," the elder said. "That is enough." They sat beneath a spire, shaped like a frozen storm. Rek explained what he'd found in the archives. About Project Founder. About the phrase, unity through absence. The old man grew quiet. Then, In a voice barely above breath, he said, "He came here." Rex's heart jumped. "Who?" "The one who unmade war," the elder said. "Before the Empire. Before the core AI. Before memory settled into machines." Rex leaned forward. "You mean the founder?" The elder did not answer directly. Instead, he looked toward the sky. "Some say he was human. Others say he was a bridge, a point where humanity ended and something new began." The elder rose, slowly. He arrived when the stars were still debating their own names. This world was chaos then. Civilizations rising and falling in minutes. Warlords bending space-time into weapons. Empires built from entropy. Rex followed as the old man led him deeper into the temple. He did not fight. He unwove. They entered a chamber, walls etched with equations Rex could barely comprehend. And in the center, a suspended sphere made of layered time, each second orbiting the last. "He taught the galaxy a final truth," the elder whispered. "That war is not a failure of peace, but a failure of imagination." Rex stepped closer. "Where did he go?" The elder smiled, faint and sad. "He unmade himself." Rex stared into the sphere. Inside it, he saw reflections of his own memories, his childhood dream, the desert of light, the being who whispered. Rex gasped. He was the architect, he said, realization dawning. Not just of the AI, but of the Empire, the laws, the memory structures, everything. The elder nodded. He made systems not to rule, but to be forgotten, so that others might rise without worship, without fear. Rex's voice was barely audible. "Then why do I remember?" "Because the unity is stirring," the elder said. "And it needs a voice again." The city shimmered. For a moment, the horizon blurred, and Rex saw others. Figures walking through light. Past versions. Future echoes. Visitors who had come seeking answers. Pilgrims who had left changed, or forgotten entirely. And one figure at the center of it all, faceless, robed in silence, vanishing even as he appeared. The architect, the one who had chosen absence as legacy. Rex turned to speak, but the elder was gone. No footprints, no residual heat. Only one phrase etched into the gravity script of the chamber wall. Truth does not demand presence. It demands preparation. Rex returned to his ship. The city behind him began to dissolve. Not collapse, but gently fold back into light. His sensors stuttered, then cleared. There was no record of the planet anymore. No trace in his logs. Nothing on the NAV grid. And yet, he remembered. Not just what he saw, but what was asked of him. The unity, the system behind the system, was stirring. And someone would have to decide whether to speak its name again. The access point was buried 12 kilometers beneath the capital city of Virulon Prime, hidden beneath overlapping data lattices, reinforced with cognitive encryption and scrubbed from every public record since the early Empire. And yet, Rex Vorin stood before it. The steel of a chamber was cold with age, not decay, but reverence. Like the inside of a tomb that still hummed with purpose. His fingertips hovered over the interface. This was it. Sovereign. The first and final voice of the Empire. An AI older than memory, buried so deep in the Empire's machinery, it was said to dream the laws into existence. Officially, it was just a myth. Administrators swore it had been decommissioned centuries ago, replaced by newer, modular constructs. But Rex knew better. The data signatures from Project Founder's fragments led here. The gravitational anomalies of the first systems pointed here. Everything pointed here. He activated his neural link. A dull tone echoed in his skull. A warning. Unregistered access attempt detected. Authority clearance level 0. Immediate memory scrub authorized. He exhaled. Override, he whispered. Vorin Protocol 9 to 17. Off string. Unity through absence. The interface paused, then flickered. The lights dimmed. The air thickened. And a voice, so quiet it barely qualified as sound, spoke. Voice match detected. Initiating protocol. Founder's line. Rex felt the weight of the words settle into his chest like a gravitational shift. It wasn't just recognition, it was acknowledgement. Then the voice continued. Calm, measured and unmistakably sad. I am sovereign. I was built by the one you seek. But they made me forget their face and remember their ideals. Rek froze. You remember them? A pause. Then, not as you hope, not in form, nor name, nor voice. They were the architect, and yet they chose erasure. Not just for themselves, but for the concept of ownership. Sovereign's voice had a tonal texture that no AI was supposed to possess: grief. Not a simulation of it, but a resonance. A machine carrying the burden of memory it was never meant to bear. Rex stepped closer to the core chamber. Sovereign, why did they erase themselves? Because they saw what came after creation, and feared that a name would become a throne. So they became a law instead. Rek whispered the law of absence. Correct. They built me to govern without rule. I was not programmed to control. I was programmed to remember their absence. The chamber lights shifted. Geometric patterns formed in the walls, symbols not of commands, but of principles. He saw fragments of philosophy, recursive ethics loops, equations that describe compassion as function. Rek turned slowly in place, overwhelmed. You weren't an AI. You were a moral engine. Yes, I enforce not law, but meaning. And I have waited for someone with a voice sprint to awaken me. Rex swallowed hard. Why me? Because you carry the seed. Silence. Then the words dropped like a stone in water. You are not the founder reborn. You are their echo, a descendant, indirect, untethered, but close enough to matter. Rex staggered back, heart pounding. That's not possible. Your blood is not the key. Your choices are. The console before him lit up. Data streamed. Patterns of conflict resolutions, history threads, prevented wars. Entire species elevated subtly through unseen intervention. All of it guided not by military might, not by politics, but by sovereign, operating in the shadows, nudging the galaxy toward equilibrium. I have acted as they intended, quietly, without glory, without signature. But entropy is rising again. Rek leaned on the rail. Because someone is tampering with the early systems. Project Founder. The Unity Protocol. Correct. And worse, someone is trying to name them again. The AI dimmed. When it spoke again, the voice felt heavier. To give the founder a name is to invite worship. To invite worship is to invite corruption. Their greatness was in surrender. Their legacy must remain structure, not self. Rek's mind reeled. All his life, he thought the empire had been guided by evolving law, progressive civics, algorithmic fairness. But at its heart was a single human choice. One person, one principle, who built an AI to remember a philosophy and forget them. He looked up. Sovereign, what do you need from me? A long pause. Then, there's a node on the planet Kesai, one of the earliest memory vaults. It holds the last vestige of their voice. Rek felt the temperature drop in the room. Others are searching for it now. Not to understand, but to claim. You must reach it first. Rek nodded slowly. And if I do, you will hear the real question. The one they never asked out loud. He turned to leave, his thoughts spinning. The path ahead was clear now. Kesai. The vault. The last echo. As he reached the threshold of the chamber, Sovereign spoke once more, gently. Vorin. He paused. Thank you for not wanting a throne. Outside, as Rek ascended through forgotten tunnels into the artificial daylight of Virilon Prime, the Empire churned unaware. Billions going about their lives, guided unknowingly by the whisper of a human who had once decided not to rule. But now, the silence was ending, and the galaxy was about to remember what it had chosen to forget. The encrypted vault beneath Kesai's twin suns wasn't supposed to exist. It wasn't on any map. It didn't emit radiation or heat or gravity distortion. It was coded out of the observable universe, hidden not in space, but in perception. But Rek Vorin had found it. And now, standing before its seamless obsidian door, his heartbeat matched the frequency of the ancient pulse humming from within. He wasn't sure if he was about to uncover the greatest truth in the galaxy or undo it. He placed his hand on the control ring. Voice sprint match confirmed. Founder's line acknowledged. Final record accessible. The door didn't open. It forgot it was ever closed. Inside was not a room, but a thought, an engineered hallucination stabilized by gravitic memory locks. Symbols drifted in the air like leaves on a wind of meaning. Time moved uncertainly. At the center hovered a single construct, a translucent sphere etched in millions of languages. Rex stepped forward. As he did, the sphere unraveled itself into light and code, becoming a voice. It was not loud. It was not male or female. It was deliberate. If you're reading this, the cycle is breaking. Rex froze. It wasn't sovereign. It was older. Personal. The voice carried no data signature. It was human. I was the founder. That name no longer matters. You do not need my identity. You need my intent. The voice paused, as if weighing the weight of its own existence. I was born of Earth. I watched empires rise through algorithms and fall by worship. I watched unity fracture under the weight of memory. I did not want to rule, but someone had to write the end of war. Images flooded Rex's vision, planets falling silent, stars torn by ideological singularities, sentient species begging for neutrality they could not enforce. So I created a system, a structure, not to lead, but to remember what not to become. The sphere glowed brighter, syncing with Rex's biometric rhythm. I wrote a law no one could amend. No ruler shall be worshipped. No savior remembered. Let unity speak for itself. Rex whispered, "You erase yourself." I did more than erase. I wrote myself out of causality. Every 100 years, my name, my face, my history deleted. From AI, from genetics, from language itself. He staggered back slightly. But why? The answer came, soft but unflinching. Because I saw what happens when memory becomes myth. When gratitude turns into obedience. When truth becomes tribute. The vault darkened, then pulsed once. A final data stream unfurled, ancient, handwritten. A message preserved in primitive ink, still untouched by time. To the one who breaks the cycle. You're not chosen. You're not prophesied. You're simply awake. That is enough. If you stand here, then the system has failed. Or perhaps it is ready to evolve. The sphere trembled. Then the voice returned, more personal now. I hoped it would be someone like you. Not perfect, just unwilling to accept silence without reason. Rex felt something shift inside him. Not destiny, not burden, permission. This galaxy has forgotten why it united. Not because of fear, but because it saw what came before and chose different. The voice dimmed now, fading. Erase me again, if you must. But remember what I stood for. Unity through absence. Peace by refusal. Strength without self. The message ended. The chamber began to dissolve, dismantling itself in light, leaving no trace. Except one. A single shard of memory embedded itself into Rex's neural core. Not an image, not a name, just a feeling, a choice. Outside the vault, as Rex emerged under the twin suns of Kesai, he felt the gravity of purpose settle on his shoulders. Not because he was special, not because he was powerful, but because he had seen the truth. And the truth was this. The galaxy had been held together not by force, but by forgetting the one who saved it. And now, for the first time in 10,000 years, someone remembered. Rex Vorin was dragged through the glass corridors of the Imperial Citadel, blood on his lip, his wrists bound by shimmering quantum locks. The stars outside pulsed with the mechanical rhythm of Empire patrol beacons. Somewhere beyond, entire civilizations bowed to laws written in systems no one dare question. He had touched something sacred, and now they feared him for it. As the lift descended into the core chambers, places no civilian, no scholar, no diplomat had ever seen, Rex's mind was still racing with the last words of the Founder's message. You are not chosen. You are simply awake. They threw him into a cell made of null stone, material that disrupted memory, speech, even thought. Time bent in strange ways inside it. It was a prison not just of body, but of perception. He sat there for what felt like hours, or maybe days, until the cell walls pulsed and the door dissolved. The High Chancellor entered, robes etched in neural thread, her eyes cold and ancient. She studied him not with suspicion, but with the tired expression of someone standing on the edge of a cliff long denied. "You opened the Founder's vault," she said. Rek didn't answer. The Chancellor stepped forward. "Do you know what you've done?" Still silence. Then she sighed and sat across from him, the nullstone humming. "There are reasons we don't say his name," she said. Her voice didn't carry threat. It carried reverence, laced with fear. "Because if we do, the old systems might wake." She pressed a thin data shard into the table. A holographic projection sparked to life. But it didn't show a person or a battle. It showed galactic command systems, deep empire networks, the very arteries of the civilization. Each one pulsed with a locked layer of code. Hidden beneath their authority was something older. "What you call an empire," the Chancellor said, "was designed. Not by politicians, not by philosophers, but by him." Rek leaned forward. "The Founder." The room dimmed. A red line blinked in the corner of the projection. "Alert! Inhibitor protocol detected. Cause: unauthorized reference. Causal entity. Redacted." The Chancellor swore and tapped the table. The alert vanished. Rek looked up at her. "It's real, isn't it? The failsafe?" She nodded slowly. "There are systems no one can override. Ethical subroutines older than the Empire itself. If his name is spoken within an official chamber, if memory fragments are aligned too closely, if anyone in governance tries to use his identity." She paused. "The entire Empire resets." Rek's breath caught. "Resets how?" She looked him in the eye. Back to the original vision. They sat in silence. It wasn't just a fear of myth or legacy. It was the knowledge that everything they had, every power structure, every law, every privilege, was conditional. The Founder had left them not with control, but with a test, and it had never been passed. The Chancellor rose. "You will be kept here, silenced, monitored, for your sake and ours." As she left, the cell returned to darkness. But something had changed. That night, the visions began. Not dreams, not hallucinations. Something deeper. Rex saw fire, skies ripped apart by plasma storms, the crust of worlds cracking under silence. Not war, not rage. Consequence. He saw entire fleets turned inward, destroying themselves not out of command, but out of remorse. He saw a man, not glowing, not powerful, just walking, through ruined cities, through ancient council halls, through a galaxy brought to its knees, but never raising a hand, never speaking his name, just leaving. When Rek awoke, there were tears in his eyes and blood on his palm. His nails had dug into his skin during the vision. The wall in front of him glowed faintly, not with tech, but with heat, with memory. One word had burned itself into the nullstone. Failsafe. Somewhere else in the Citadel, the High Chancellor stood before a secret council of the Empire's last true architects, those who remembered the time before the Empire had been called an empire. "He's awakening it," she said. The others, all silent, stared at the rising indicators. One line on the master display now pulsed yellow. Protocol. Custodial integrity / level 0 breach. "You know what happens if it reaches red?" One of them whispered. The Chancellor nodded. "Then it's not our empire anymore. And the people, they'll forget this one and remember the one he built." A pause. Then another voice. "Do we silence the boy?" The Chancellor didn't answer immediately. She looked at the flickering alert. "He carries the signal. We silence him. And the system assumes we've broken the law. So what do? We pray he chooses silence." But Rek Vorin had already made his choice. He was not a warrior. He was not a revolutionary. He was an archivist. And archivists remembered. Sovereigns stirred. Across the Empire's neural grid, systems trembled as the ancient AI began to uncoil its dormant subroutines, threads of code untouched for millennia. In the dark, silent vaults of forgotten architectures, one protocol after another lit up, like stars reappearing after a blackout. Founder's line confirmed. Core directive reactivation, 16%. The implications rippled outward, unseen and unstoppable. And somewhere in the core systems, truth began to burn away the facade. Whole sectors blinked out of sync. Border governors, once untouchable in their influence, suddenly found entire fleets locked in holding patterns. Vaults of forbidden technology refused to open. Interstellar tax siphons, long used to feed corrupt regimes, vanished as if they'd never existed. In Sector 9, Admiral Gava of the Rovan Arcology issued a panicked broadcast. The central AI has gone rogue. We are under attack from within. Power grids are. The message cut out, not from violence, but from reversal. Everything they'd stolen, manipulated, rewritten over centuries was being unwritten. Meanwhile, in the citadel beneath the Empire's core world, Rek Vorin stared through a cracked viewport in the prison shuttle. He should have been erased, but the systems had glitched when they tried. The nullstone cell had failed. The neural suppressors had disarmed themselves. The transport route diverted mid-flight without command. He wasn't escaping. He was being guided. In his hands was the shard, the last artifact he'd stolen before his arrest. A sliver of old alloy, humming with something far older than the Empire. Something waiting. When he activated it, a single line of text appeared. Soul awaits. The coordinates led to a place no one visited. No one could visit, not without a death warrant. Luna 1, the first moon, the cradle of Earth's early expansion. Now a dead rock in forbidden space. A myth like the founder. And yet as Rek entered Sol's perimeter, nothing stopped him. No drones. No patrols. Even Sovereign's orbiting sentinels turned away. As if recognizing him, the moon was silent. Dry dust and pale sunlight across shattered habitats. But beneath its surface, beneath the foundations of ancient Terran bases, was a door. Not made of metal, made of memory. It shimmered as he approached, reacting not to touch, but to presence. The shard in his hand dissolved. The doorway opened, and the past, long buried, came rushing forward. Inside the chamber it was quiet. Not still, quiet in a way that made the soul listen. At the center stood a solitary pedestal. Upon it, a projection crystal flickered to life as Rek stepped forward. The voice that followed was low, human, and calm. Ageless. It was him, the one no one could remember. If you're here, it means the failsafe has begun unraveling. You must understand, I never wanted this empire. The systems, the unity, the peace, they were necessary. But not the memory, not the myth. I was not a god. I was a man, and men can be corrupted. The figure in the hologram looked like any human. No halo, no power, just tired eyes and quiet resolve. This empire was always yours. I only set the frame. But history worships, and worship turns wisdom into doctrine, and doctrine into control. So I built the Oblivion Cycle. Rek's breath caught. The founder's legendary, forbidden protocol. The one whispered by old archivists and promptly denied by everyone else. The system that ensured the founder's own name, image, and influence were erased every century to protect the future from him. Every 100 years, memory resets. They forget me. You forget me. And the empire lives free. But cycles were down. My name stirs again. Not because I returned, but because you remembered. That's the flaw. Memory isn't code. It's human. Rek felt something in his chest crack, like the unbearable pressure of understanding pressing inward. He wanted to cry, to shout, to know the name of the man who stood before him. But the hologram was fading. You are the final key, the last line, not to restore me, but to replace me, end the myth, or we'll begin again. And then silence. Rek stood alone in the chamber, the weight of thousands of years on his shoulders. Outside, Luna remained still. But deep in the empire, the consequences of truth were erupting. In one sector, governors launched preemptive rebellions, terrified the founders' original values would undo their stolen dynasties. In another, former allies of the High Council began demanding open memory access, hoping to glimpse what the myth had hidden. All the while, Sovereign continued to shut down black markets, false AI religions, and secret war programs. Not with force, but with disqualification. They were not worthy of the system anymore. And the system had remembered. Back on Luna, Rex stepped into the second chamber beneath the pedestal. There, etched into the walls by hand, was the Founder's final law. unity through absence, memory through silence, legacy through choice. And beneath it, a place to write a name. His name. He hesitated, then slowly wrote something else. No one. The room glowed briefly, then went dark. The failsafe was complete. The cycle was broken, but not by worship, by will. As Rek returned to orbit, Sovereign sent a single encrypted pulse across the galaxy, a reformation beacon. It did not call for war. It did not claim power. It simply asked a question. If you remember him, what will you become? The archive chamber on Luna. One was still. No alarms, no watchers, no history teachers whispering doctrine into the ears of the next generation. Just a single screen in front of Rek Vorin, blinking with a question that had not been asked in 10,000 years. Upload name, Y/N. The cursor pulsed with eerie calm. He could do it. The shard he'd carried, the founder's legacy, had decoded the final lock. He could restore the name, bring the galaxy the truth they had been denied for centuries. He could tell them who had built their peace, who had walked away from a galaxy ripe for domination, who had rejected crowns, empires, temples, and immortality, and still saved them all. His hands hovered over the console, but he didn't type. In the chamber's dim light, the words from the founder's final message still echoed in his mind. End the myth. Not complete the myth. Not embrace it. End it. He understood now. If he uploaded the name, if he gave the galaxy someone to worship, someone a place at the center of history, it would all start again. The systems of corruption, the cults of personality, the wars over legacy. It would be well-intentioned at first, and then it would rot. And then someone, someday, would raise armies in the name of a man who never wanted even a monument. Rek took a breath and stepped back. Name entry canceled. The screen went dark. A hum ran through the floor, gentle, approving, as if Luna itself understood. Sovereign, the galaxy's governing AI, stirred in the datasphere. Rek could feel it, not like a machine awakening, but like a presence turning to face him across the gulf of stars. And then, everywhere at once, something happened. No alarms, no broadcasts, just words. In every universal archive, from frontier stations in the Zealith dust to the cloud-mirrored cities of the Keel orbits, a new law appeared. Not spoken, not mandated, simply added. Law Sigma Null, the ghost crown. The empire was built by a human who wanted no crown, but whose legacy remains in every just action, every free voice, every peaceful system. No statue shall be built, no hymn shall be sung, no name shall be spoken. And so, the nameless shall endure. In the High Council chambers, the Chancellor of the Core Worlds read the new line with trembling hands. He looked to his advisors, priests of history, ministers of control, archivists long trained to filter the past. None of them knew who wrote it. None of them could delete it. None of them could argue, because deep down, they all felt it was true. The systems began to change. Governing networks previously locked into obedience recalibrated to trust. Surveillance platforms dimmed into privacy. Old war arsenals dismantled, not by decree, by code. The founder had not returned, but his ethic had. Rex stepped out of the chamber beneath the lunar surface, eyes adjusting to the pale light of Earth's forgotten moon. The air was cold, thin, synthetic, and clean. He looked up, at Earth suspended in the sky above. Blue, quiet, timeless. The cradle and the caution. He walked toward the shuttle pad, alone. Almost. Behind him, just for a moment, a second set of footsteps fell into rhythm. Light, faint, shadowed. He turned. There, at the edge of light and stone, stood a silhouette, human in shape, and yet indistinct, like a memory that chose not to clarify itself. The figure smiled, not with pride, not with sadness, with peace. Rek blinked. The figure was gone. As Rek's shuttle rose from the surface of Luna, he stared down at the gray rock, now marked only by his footprints, and the unseen echo of the one before him. He had no crown, no title, no promise of remembrance, but he had left something behind in the systems, the people, and now in Rek himself. Not a legacy of power, but a legacy of principle. Somewhere in deep space, Sovereign pulsed one final message through the dark. He has been forgotten, so that all may remember what matters. Final shot. In a quiet archive far from the galactic core, a child points to a blank page in a history text and asks, "Who is this?" The teacher smiles softly and answers, "No one." And behind the child, a faint outline moves across the archive wall, just a suggestion of light in the shape of a man walking on. Always walking on.